Today, we're about to lift the veil on a mystery that has puzzled archaeologists, historians, and seekers of the mystical for centuries. A civilization vanished in the heart of the jungle, without war, without disaster, as if it simply dissolved into time. Yet, leaving behind cities, temples, and pyramids, it continues to speak to us across the ages. A people who understood the concept of zero long before Europe, who built cities without iron or wheels, and who created calendars so precise that even today they baffle scientists. These were the Maya, and everything we think we know about them may be just a shadow of the true story. But how could a civilization that rose in the heart of the jungle, without metal, wheels, or even domesticated animals, construct cities that still amaze architects today, who taught the Maya to measure time with a precision Europe wouldn't achieve for thousands of years? And why did this people, possessing such knowledge, suddenly vanish, leaving behind only stone temples and the whisper of legends? What do you think? Did the Maya really disappear, or did they simply move on, leaving a puzzle that we have yet to solve? The birth of the Maya. Cities, writing, and numbers. The story of the Maya civilization is not just a tale of an ancient people. It's a mystery stretched over more than 3,000 years. Scholars divide their history into three periods: early, classic, and post-classic. These boundaries are not absolute, but they help us understand how small settlements grew into great cities, how gods, calendars, and astronomy emerged, and how it all eventually declined. Today, we travel back to the very beginning, to a time when everything was just taking shape. A time when the first Maya carved paths through dense tropical forests to build their first homes and cultivate the land. The earliest settlements appeared around 2000 BCE. These were small villages hidden among the foliage, where people had already adopted a sedentary way of life. They grew maize, beans, squash, chili peppers, and cacao, crops that would become the foundation of their world. Maize or corn held a special place. For us, it's just food. For them, it was the source of life. According to their myths, the gods created the first humans from maize dough, granting them both mind and soul. But the Maya were not the first to explore the mysteries of numbers and the heavens. Along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, another great culture was already flourishing: the Olmecs. They created the first writing systems, developed calendars, and laid the foundations of rituals that the Maya would later inherit. The Olmecs passed down their understanding of sacred cycles of time, the concept of zero, and the feathered serpent, a being that would eventually become the Great Kukulkan. Yet the Maya went further. They didn't just adopt knowledge, they refined it. From their calculations emerged the most accurate calendar of the ancient world and one of the most mysterious writing systems, where each glyph was simultaneously a sound, an image, and a kind of spell. Around 1000 BCE, the first cities began to rise. One of the oldest is Nakbe, in what is now Guatemala. Archaeologists have uncovered stone platforms and pyramids there, the first steps toward the towering structures that would later appear in Tikal and Chichen Itza. During this period, a special class of priests emerged, not merely religious leaders, but the scholars of their time. They observed the stars, made calculations, recorded rituals, and managed communities. They became the guardians of knowledge and the vital link between gods and humans. As cities grew, so did power. Chiefs became rulers, authority was passed down through dynasties, and each lineage claimed divine origin. Alliances were formed, wars were fought, and fortifications were built. We enter the classic period of Maya civilization, a time when humble settlements transformed into magnificent city-states. Temples reached for the sky, and science and art soared to incredible heights. This was the golden age of the Maya, an era of rulers whose names were carved in stone, an era of achievements across countless fields. But it was also a time of wars, intrigue, and power struggles, as cities rose, expanded their influence, and clashed in fierce conflicts. Each major Maya city was unique, with its own identity and role in history. They differed in architecture, political ambitions, and even in the way they waged war. Tikal stands as a legend among Maya cities. The mighty city of the jaguar, deep in the jungles of Guatemala, became a center of political power and one of the era's key military strongholds. Its pyramids towered above the surrounding landscape, and its rulers claimed dominion over the wider civilization. The main temple rising among Tikal's ruins was known as the Temple of the Great Jaguar. The jaguar symbolized power, the night, and the underworld. In Maya mythology, it was associated with the god of the underworld and revered as the protector of warriors and kings. The Temple of the Great Jaguar served as the tomb of Hasso-chan Kayawal-I, a powerful ruler who sought to extend his influence through military conquest. The jaguar embodied predatory strength, and the ruler was presented as its living incarnation. The temple walls are adorned with images of the king seated on a jaguar-skin throne, and the inner chambers were filled with artifacts representing authority and victory. Tikal was also a hub of military campaigns. Its armies were strong, its allies numerous, and its enemies had good reason to fear its claws. But if Tikal was the jaguar, Calakmul was the serpent. Located in what is now Mexico, this city was Tikal's chief political rival. Its rulers bore the title Divine Serpent, and the city's symbol was a massive snake coiling around the earth. In Maya culture, the serpent represented wisdom, cunning, and control over life and death. Unlike Tikal, which built its empire through warfare, Calakmul thrived on political intrigue. It wove alliances, plotted conspiracies, and slowly weakened its rival. For 2 centuries, Calakmul gathered a coalition of cities in an attempt to destroy Tikal. It won several battles, eroding the city's military strength. But in the 6th century, Tikal rallied its forces, crushed Calakmul, and reasserted its dominance. This war became one of the longest and most destructive conflicts in Maya history, leading to the collapse of entire dynasties, the ruin of dozens of cities, and the weakening of the civilization as a whole. While Tikal and Calakmul fought for supremacy, Kapan and Palenque emerged as centers of science, art, and engineering. Kapan developed a unique writing system, and its rulers sought to leave their mark on history through stone inscriptions carved into temple and palace steps. Palenque, in turn, became a jewel of architecture. It housed the Temple of the Inscriptions, the tomb of the great ruler Pakal the Great. His sarcophagus and jade funerary mask became some of the most remarkable archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. For the Maya, war was more than just a struggle for land or power. It was a ritual, a sacred act connecting humans with the gods, a chance to prove valor and strengthen a ruler's authority. The warrior acted as a mediator between this world and Xibalba, the underworld of the dead. From a young age, boys were trained to become warriors. They were taught that a man's true strength lay in his ability to fight, capture enemies, and offer them as sacrifices to the gods. Success in battle brought fame, respect, high social standing, and the opportunity to join the elite. The more captives a warrior brought back, the higher his status. The Maya didn't just gather soldiers. Their fighters underwent strict selection. Only those willing to dedicate their lives to capturing enemies, to fight fearlessly for their ruler, and to die for the gods could become warriors. Professional soldiers were called halkin, warriors who endured rigorous training. They mastered archery, spear throwing, swordsmanship, and the art of moving unseen through the jungle. Above them were the Alahuin, elite noble warriors who commanded units and fought on the front lines. They wore the finest armor, led personal squads, and could challenge enemies to one-on-one combat. The supreme commander was known as the Nakam, a strategist and tactician who directed the entire army, planned campaigns, selected targets, and bore responsibility for victory or defeat. Finally, the Aha, the ruler himself, often led troops into battle personally. He embodied the god of war, and his presence on the battlefield was believed to ensure triumph. Among all warriors, the elite held a special place. They stood out in battle and were seen as emissaries of the gods, embodiments of ancient powers. Jaguar warriors wore the pelts of predators, moving swiftly and silently. They struck without warning, shattered enemy formations, captured commanders, and vanished into the night. Their tactics mirrored the hunt in the wild: stealth, patience, and sudden attacks. Their faces were painted, black stripes cut across their skin, eyes gleaming in the moonlight. Their steps were silent, their strikes lightning fast. They didn't fight, they hunted. Before attacking, they howled, growled, and mimicked the roar of jaguars. The beastly cries struck terror into their enemies, breaking their will to resist. Strikes were precise and deadly. Their weapon, the macuahuitl, a wooden sword lined with obsidian blades, tore flesh like the claws of a real jaguar. They rarely killed immediately. Instead, they disarmed, broke bones, but left their captives alive, for their blood was destined to be offered atop the pyramid. Night was their ally. Jaguar warriors moved like shadows, emerging and disappearing among the jungle to surround their enemies. They knew when to wait and when to strike. If jaguars ruled the darkness, the serpent warriors controlled strategy itself. They rarely attacked head-on. Instead, they infiltrated enemy cities, sowing chaos. They whispered treachery, bribed guards, and opened gates just as the army approached. They won battles without fighting whenever possible. Serpent warriors wore snakeskin armor and gold serpent amulets, their bodies inked with coiled serpent tattoos. They were under the protection of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, god of wisdom and destructive power. Their preferred weapons were poisoned spears, and they struck swiftly at throats and livers, slipping silently among enemy lines. When night faded, the eagle warriors took the field. They were thunder, storm, the wrath of the sun itself. They did not hide or wait. They struck with overwhelming speed and power. Eagle warriors adorned themselves with eagle feathers, their faces painted in gold and red patterns representing the sun's heat and the blood of foes. They raised their arms to mimic flight, their battle cries echoing for miles. Eagles attacked first, breaking enemy ranks with projectiles, spears, and massive swords, raining down destruction from above. If the battle dragged on, jaguar and serpent warriors would finish the enemy. None could escape once all three types were engaged. The Maya did not fight on open plains. Their battlegrounds were jungles, mountains, and walled cities. They avoided frontal assaults, appearing where least expected. Controlling water was a favorite strategy. A city could endure for years with food, but without water, it fell within days. Rivers were poisoned, supply lines cut, and wells blocked. Fear was another weapon. Before battle, warriors howled, displayed the skulls of sacrificial enemies, staged feints, all to break the enemy's spirit. Battles were performances, carefully orchestrated to crush the opponent before they even realized what was happening. And the captives, they became offerings to the gods. Prisoners were paraded through city streets for all to see, and at the journey's end, priests awaited atop pyramids. Hearts were ripped from chests, and blood spilled across stone to nourish the gods. Not all captives were sacrificed immediately. Some served as slaves, and high-value prisoners like rulers or great warriors might be spared. Their heads were shaved, they were dressed as captives, and they served their new masters. By the 9th century, the Maya city-states began to fade. It wasn't a sudden collapse or a catastrophe that happened overnight, but a slow, painful process. One by one, people abandoned once mighty centers, leaving streets empty and temples deserted. Yet this end marked the beginning of a new era. The South, once vibrant and powerful, fell into darkness. Meanwhile, in the sun-scorched north of the Yucatan, a new world was emerging. Cities that had long competed suddenly faced the same fate. Trade caravans vanished, markets fell silent. Noble houses, once gleaming with gold and jade, gathered dust. People left everything behind: fields, homes, ancestral altars. The jungle swallowed temples, and priests who had once called upon the gods now fled in fear. What had happened? Why did a civilization capable of building astonishing cities and unlocking the secrets of the stars suddenly lose its strength? Some believe a great drought struck. The rains that had nourished the land for centuries stopped. Reservoirs dried up. Without water, maize couldn't grow, and thousands could not be sustained. Others argue the cities destroyed themselves, caught in a whirl of bloody wars. Great rulers, desperate to maintain power, fought one another, tearing down everything they had built. Whatever the cause, one thing is certain: the southern lands, once shining with grandeur, were emptied. But this did not mean the Maya story had ended. They did not vanish, they simply relocated. The Yucatan, a vast peninsula of rocky plains and dry forests, became the new home for those fleeing the fallen southern cities. There were no dense jungles or deep rivers, but there were cenotes, natural wells filled with fresh water, life-giving sources that allowed new cities to rise. Here, powerful centers such as Chichen Itza, Uxmal, and Mayapan emerged. As travelers approached Chichen Itza, they would encounter a world unlike any southern Maya city, something unfamiliar, something new. Great temples reached for the sky like in Tikal, yet their architecture was different. Stone halls were wider and more massive, and decorations appeared that had never before been seen in Maya culture. In the main plaza stood the Pyramid of Kukulkan, a stepped temple that transformed into a mysterious spectacle each spring and fall. When the sun struck it at a precise angle, a shadow of a giant serpent appeared along the steps, as if the god himself was descending to the earth. Locals spoke of warriors who had come from the north, unlike anyone seen before. Their skin was darker, their rituals unlike the native customs. They wore armor adorned with serpents and feathers, wielded unfamiliar weapons, and their gods spoke a different language. These were the Toltecs, people from lands that would later give rise to the legendary Aztec Empire. They brought new philosophies, religions, methods of war, and above all, their god, Kukulkan, the feathered serpent. Kukulkan was a god of civilization, order, and knowledge, but also of war and authority. He demanded not only obedience, but blood. On Chichen Itza's courts, once used for the sacred ball game, prisoners' heads rolled across the stones as priests performed sacrifices. Victims were cast into cenotes, believed to carry their souls to the gods' underworld. On ritual altars, warriors' hearts were removed and raised to the sky as offerings. The Yucatan was not a unified state. It was a collection of cities, each vying for supremacy. Chichen Itza fell, Uxmal rose. Uxmal declined, Mayapan ascended, but none could hold dominion over the land for long. The Maya, who had built civilizations for centuries, now tore them apart with their own hands. Their cities were raided by neighbors, their power undermined by intrigue, and their priests prayed to gods who remained silent. And on the horizon, a new threat slowly approached. From across the ocean, from lands unknown to them, ships sailed, carrying men in gleaming armor, armed with fire and deadly disease. The Spaniards. Their arrival would change the Maya world forever. Through the humid air of the Yucatan, above the green jungles and ancient temples, came the first ominous sound. Heavy sails billowed in the wind, and ships unlike anything the Maya had ever seen dropped anchor along the shore. On that day, when the Spaniards first set foot on Maya land, the final chapter of their history began. In 1511, a Spanish ship sailing from Panama to Hispaniola was caught in a storm. The wind howled like the voice of an ancient god, tearing at the sails. Waves battered the wooden hull until the vessel finally broke upon the reefs. 30 men clung to debris, struggling to reach land, unaware of where they were or who awaited them. As the first Spaniards stepped ashore, armed warriors surrounded them immediately. Obsidian-bladed macuahuitls, drawn bows, and spears tipped with bone pointed at the strangers. The Maya had not expected visitors, and they trusted them even less. The surviving Spaniards were taken prisoner. Some were killed on the spot, others were soon sacrificed to the gods. Hearts were ripped from chests atop pyramid platforms, blood flowed over the stones, and skulls adorned ritual altars. Yet 2 men survived. One of the survivors was Gonzalo Guerrero. Not just a sailor, he was a warrior who understood what it meant to fight and to survive. He quickly realized that if he wanted to live, he had to become one of them. He learned their language, adopted their customs, earned their respect, and became one of the Maya. Gonzalo Guerrero became a warrior, married the daughter of a local chief, and had children. When the Spaniards returned to the Yucatan years later, he stood with the Maya. He faced them with an obsidian blade in hand, his face tattooed in Maya patterns, his body painted with warrior markings. He died as a Maya, defending his adopted homeland. The other survivor, Geronimo de Aguilar, took a different path. He remained a captive but held onto his faith and culture. Years later, when Hernan Cortés arrived, Aguilar joined him, becoming a translator and intermediary between the Spaniards and the peoples of the Yucatan. This division, the choice between Maya and Spain, foreshadowed what would soon happen to the entire civilization. In 1517, Spanish Captain Francisco Hernández de Córdoba led a fleet to the Yucatan coast. This time, their arrival was no accident but a deliberate expedition. They sought gold, new lands, and people to conquer. The Spaniards landed. Maya rulers, priests, warriors, and villagers greeted them with gifts, cotton textiles, cacao, and jade ornaments. They had no idea what awaited them. The Spaniards examined the treasures, touched the fabrics, tasted the cacao. But their eyes showed no delight. They sought gold, and the Maya had none. Soon, the peaceful encounter turned into slaughter. The Spaniards struck first. Their steel swords cut through Maya shields and armor. Their muskets spewed fire, terrifying people who had never seen such weapons. Horses clad in armor charged forward, trampling warriors and breaking their lines. But the Maya did not flee. They fought. They set ambushes in the jungle, struck at night, and burned Spanish camps. They feared nothing, for dying in battle meant joining the gods. Yet the odds were against them. The Spaniards left the Yucatan, but they promised to return, with an even larger army, with greater fire and brutality. And the Spaniards brought a weapon no Maya ruler had ever known: disease. Smallpox, measles, typhus, diseases unknown in the New World. They did not kill the Spaniards quickly. Europeans had built up immunity over centuries, but the Maya had none. People died by the hundreds, then thousands, then entire cities. Priests called to the gods, but there was no answer. They sacrificed more, ripped out more hearts, but the gods remained silent. Cities became graveyards. The Spaniards didn't even have to fight. The diseases were already doing the work for them. Even as the Spanish stomped across the lands of the Aztecs and Incas, and new colonies rose on the bones of ancient civilizations, the Maya still held on. Their story didn't end in a single night, and it wasn't tied to just one city. They fought to the last. Their remaining cities remained free, like islands of light amid the darkness of conquest. The Spanish called them stubborn and cruel barbarians, but in truth, the Maya simply refused to surrender. They had no single king like the Aztecs, no capital whose fall would mean the end of everything. Their civilization was woven from countless city-states, each fighting for itself, its land, and its gods. The conquest of the Yucatan stretched over more than a century and a half. One by one, the Spanish crushed cities, destroyed temples, and killed priests. Yet somewhere in the jungles, a new military leader would rise. Somewhere else priests whispered prayers to Kukulkan. Somewhere new altars were built to offer sacrifices and call back the gods. But eventually, all the cities fell. The last to resist was Teazal, a city perched on an island in the middle of Lake Patain-Itza. Its massive walls reflected in the waters, as if the city floated between two worlds, the realm of ancient gods and the world of conquerors. Teazal remained free when all other Maya lands had fallen. Here, sacrifices to the old gods still took place, and the voices of spirits dwelling in the jungle were still remembered. The Spanish couldn't simply storm the city. The island, surrounded by water, was a natural fortress. The ruler of Teazal, Can-Ek, knew the Spanish were strong, cunning, and ruthless. But he also knew that if the city fell, his people would face slavery or death. At first, he tried to negotiate, hoping to preserve his power and protect his gods. He believed it might be possible to find a compromise and avoid destruction. But he was wrong. In 1697, the Spanish, led by Martin de Ursua, approached Lake Patain-Itza with cannons, soldiers, and fire capable of burning entire cities. They built boats to cross the lake, and when their fleet was ready, they struck at the last city of the free Maya. Teazal fell in fire and blood. The Spanish razed it to the ground. They destroyed the temples, burned all the books, and killed those who refused to submit. With the fall of Teazal, the era of the independent Maya civilization came to an end. But the Spanish didn't just destroy their cities, they obliterated the very memory of the Maya. The Maya were, among many things, keepers of knowledge. Their scholars understood numbers, stars, and the movements of planets. They calculated eclipses, created complex calendars, and grasped the concept of zero long before Europeans. They wrote books that preserved the history of their people, their myths, and their science. When the Spanish arrived, these books became a source of fear. Bishop Diego de Landa declared that the Maya books were works of the devil, containing false knowledge contrary to the Christian God. He ordered every codex, inscription, and record he could find to be gathered and burned. In the central square of the Spanish settlement, a massive fire was lit. Scrolls, books, wooden tablets engraved with symbols, all were thrown into the flames. Centuries of knowledge went up in smoke. The Maya watched as their history died before their eyes. They saw their world vanish in the fire, black clouds carrying away the words of their ancestors, their prayers, their science, and their life. Later, Diego de Landa wrote in his report, "We found many books, but since they contained nothing but superstitions and devilish inventions, we burned them." These words devastated the indigenous people to the core. They weren't just saddened, they were hollowed out from within. Of the thousands of books that once existed in Maya civilization, only 4 have survived to this day. Yet even amid the ashes, memory did not vanish entirely. Descendants of the priests could no longer write in their native script, so they began recording their stories in Spanish, using Latin letters, but in their own language. This is how the Popol Vuh came into being, a book of myths and legends, telling of the creation of the world, ancient gods, and heroes. And the books of Xibalba, collections of prophecies, predictions, and fragments of history, secretly recorded in fear of the Spanish. These works couldn't replace the books that were lost, but they preserved the voice of an ancient people. When the Spanish burned their cities, shattered their temples, and declared their gods defeated, the Maya did not stop believing. They knew the true gods do not die or vanish. They remained in the sunlight, in the sound of rain, and in the whisper of the wind. The Maya understood that their lives were intertwined with the deities. Every day, every harvest, every victory or defeat was the result of divine will. If the rains were late, Chak was angered. If the year was bountiful, Kukulkan was pleased. And when someone died, their soul journeyed to Xibalba, the underworld of the gods of death. Their belief did not divide the world into simple good and evil. The gods could be merciful, but they could also punish. They demanded obedience, adherence to tradition and offerings. Without this, the world could vanish, just as great cities disappeared, abandoned by humans and swallowed by the jungle. Among all gods, Kukulkan was one of the greatest and most revered. He embodied both the power of the serpent and the lightness of the bird, bridging two worlds, the earthly and the celestial. Legends say Kukulkan came from the east, teaching people writing, science, and craft. He gave them laws, taught them to build cities, and created rituals meant to maintain order in the world. He was depicted as a giant feathered serpent. Sometimes he appeared in human form, but with a serpent's head or adorned with feathers. In Maya art, he always looked powerful and serene, radiating knowledge and authority. Kukulkan symbolized civilization, order, and wisdom. Because of him, the Maya believed they were a chosen people, capable of understanding the laws of time and space. But one day, he departed. Legends tell that he left Maya lands, sailing beyond the horizon, promising to return one day. When the Spanish arrived on the shores of Yucatan, some Maya remembered this myth. Could Hernan Cortés be Kukulkan returning? Had he come to take back what was once left behind? But Cortés did not bring them the light of knowledge. He brought only destruction. Life in these lands depended on rain. Fields and rivers dried and people suffered from hunger. That is why Chak was one of the most important gods. He was seen as a mighty spirit of water, capable of summoning storms, filling wells, granting harvests, or bringing drought. Chak could be benevolent when honored and cruel when forgotten. To gain his favor, the Maya held ceremonies, threw offerings into cenotes, and sometimes even human sacrifices. The priests said that Chak lived in the heavens, controlling the flow of water from above. Sometimes he was depicted holding a coiled serpent in his hand, lightning spewing from its mouth. If the rains delayed for too long, people knew he was angry. Then they would offer sacrifices, children, young women, or warriors, casting them into deep cenotes filled with cold water. They believed their souls could persuade Chak to release the rain. When the first rumble of thunder echoed in the distance, when the first raindrop touched the parched earth, people knew he had heard them. Long before the sun and the moon, before the first humans breathed air and the world took shape, there was Itzamna. He was the first being, the force that brought everything into existence. Not a god in the usual sense, he was the eternal beginning, present even before time itself. The Maya believed he wove the world together, linking sky and earth, creating harmony among the elements. He was not cruel or demanding like many other gods. He did not thirst for blood or demand constant sacrifices. Instead, he bestowed knowledge, protected the wise, and watched over priests and rulers. Legends say Itzamna created the world by separating sky and earth, much like a craftsman cuts fabric. He raised the heavens, establishing 13 levels where gods and spirits dwelt. Then he formed the earth, giving it 9 levels leading to the underworld Xibalba. Between them, he left space for humans, animals, and plants. At first, the earth was bare, empty, and still. Then Itzamna created the sun to bring life to the world, and the moon to light the nights. After that, he made the first humans. Unlike the gods, they were weak and mortal. He gave them fire for warmth, maize to sustain them, and language so they could speak. Then he stepped into the shadows. His mission was complete. The world existed, and time began. Priests believed he had not vanished completely. He watches over humans from the heavens. He does not interfere in their daily affairs like other gods. But if balance is disturbed, he will return to restore it. Unlike Chak, who demanded blood for rain, or Kukulkan, who punished those who disobeyed his laws, Itsamna required no sacrifices. He was a god of wisdom, honored with incense smoke, colorful prayers, and offerings of crafted goods. If Itsamna welcomed creation, Apuch awaited every living being at the moment life faded. He did not appear while people were strong, but lingered in the shadows, knowing that sooner or later, everyone would face him. Apuch looked every bit the lord of the underworld. His face was a grinning skull, with empty eye sockets and cold hands that stole the warmth of life. Necklaces of eyeballs adorned him, and his cloak was woven from shadows. He did not arrive unexpectedly. Owls, mice, and vultures carried the news of his approach. If a guttural owl cry rang out at night, it meant death had already come for someone. But people did not simply wait for him. They tried to appease him, to slow his steps. Apuch was not a god to whom one could pray for mercy, but he could be fed, so that he would not take more lives than necessary. To maintain balance, priests offered sacrifices, warriors, captives, and sometimes even nobles. They believed that if they did not give him a few lives, he would take far more than needed. But it was not always the blood of others that satisfied him. Sometimes the priests made small cuts on themselves, offering a few drops of their own blood to the god of death, hoping to temper his anger. They knew they could not stop him entirely, but they could delay his coming. Itsamna gave life, creating and filling the world with breath. Apuch took it, yet tested whether a soul was worthy to be reborn. The Maya understood that this cycle never ceased, that everything in the world existed through the balance of creation and destruction. They worshipped the Creator but respected death. They celebrated life, yet did not fear its end. Death was not an erasure. It was a new path that every being must take. When a person died, their body remained on earth, but the soul began its long journey downward, into depths hidden from sunlight. The Maya knew death was not the end, but the start of a new trial. Xibalba awaited every soul. This underworld was cold and grim, full of traps and suffering. Once there, the soul found no rest. It had to endure many trials to prove it was worthy of either eternal peace or rebirth. Not every soul completed the journey. Many were lost, trapped forever in the realm of the dead. The Maya did not believe in hell as other cultures did. Xibalba was a place where weakness was punished and the strength of spirit rewarded. It was a vast subterranean land, filled with dark halls, rivers of blood, and labyrinths where souls wandered for eternity. The entrance lay deep underground, behind hidden caves and bottomless cenotes, where humans had cast sacrifices to the gods. In Xibalba, no sun shone, no trees or birds existed, only cold stone chambers, rivers filled with the moans of the dead, and bridges that could collapse at any moment. Here ruled the god of death, Apuch, and his retinue. They did not simply wait for the dead. They tested them, tormented them, and forced them to prove their strength. As soon as a soul left the body, it did not immediately enter Xibalba. A trial awaited, a judgment determining its fate. The Maya believed that the gods of death first examined the person's life. Their deeds, the sacrifices they made to the gods, their bravery in battle, their respect for ancestors, and whether they upheld the laws. But this judgment was more than a simple evaluation. The soul had to pass through 9 levels of the underworld, each trial capable of breaking it or granting passage forward. The journey through the underworld was perilous. The gods of Xibalba released no one easily. The Maya told of travelers descending into the realm of the dead, facing countless deadly challenges. One of the first obstacles was the river of blood, which had to be crossed without drowning. If the soul was too weak, it remained there forever. Next came the halls of trial. In the hall of ice, the traveler was gripped by deadly cold, survived only by sheer will. In the Hall of Fire, flames scorched anyone attempting to pass. In the Hall of Jaguars, the soul faced bloodthirsty predators leaping from the darkness. In the Hall of Bats, thousands of creatures swirled, capable of tearing the soul apart. Each challenge tested the strength of will, resilience, and the ability to resist fear. Those who survived all the trials proved their strength. They could leave Xibalba and either be reborn in a new body or ascend to the celestial realms where the great spirits dwelled. Those who did not endure were claimed by the gods of death. Their souls remained in the shadowy depths of the underworld, wandering for eternity without finding a way out. Yet the Maya believed that even the weakest spirits did not disappear entirely. They became shadows gliding through the jungle at night, voices whispering in the wind, signs reflected in water. Could one avoid Xibalba? Yes, but not everyone succeeded. The most honorable deaths for the Maya were to fall in battle, die in childbirth, or be offered as a sacrifice to the gods. Such souls did not enter Xibalba. They were carried by the sun gods to live among the stars, among ancestors, those who had earned eternal rest. But ordinary people could not avoid their path. They could only face all the trials and prove themselves worthy of leaving the realm of the dead. For the Maya, death was a journey. They did not fear it but prepared for it, knowing that the most difficult part began after death. The trials of Xibalba awaited all, but not everyone could survive them. The Maya world rested on a fragile balance between the forces of life and death, between the sunlight and the shadows of the underworld. They believed the universe had collapsed several times already, and if the gods were not honored, it could vanish again. To prevent this, people had to offer the gods their most precious things: blood, life, and strength. This was an exchange established from ancient times. The gods gave life to humans, and humans periodically gave part of themselves so the universe could continue. The Maya believed these sacrifices were not senseless cruelty. Every ritual and every drop of blood had a purpose and meaning. And sometimes, to offer the gods a gift, it was not necessary to die in battle or on an altar. Victory in a ritual ball game could suffice. They believed blood was energy, a vital force necessary for the gods. In the beginning of time, the gods themselves had shed their blood to create the world. Humans, therefore, had to return it to sustain existence. But not all blood was equally valuable. The more important the person, the greater the power in their sacrifice. Kings, priests, and noble warriors were the most potent offerings. Their blood was pure, imbued with strength and blessing. Captured warriors were offered to the gods of war. Their deaths symbolized one city's victory over another. Children and young women were sacrificed to Chak, the rain god, whose favor could bring the long-awaited downpour. But not all offerings required death. Sometimes priests gave a portion of their own strength by piercing their tongue, ears, or other limbs, letting the blood flow to be burned and offered to the gods. Every sacrifice was a complex ritual full of symbolism. One of the most famous was the extraction of the heart. This was performed atop pyramids so the gods could see the victim. The person was laid on a stone altar, a specially carved slab that lifted the chest, giving access to the heart. The priest, armed with an obsidian knife, swiftly cut open the chest and removed the still-beating heart, raising it to the sky. Blood ran down the steps of the pyramid, while the body was either discarded or ritually consumed. If the victim was a captured warrior, it was believed his strength transferred to the victors. Decapitation was another method, used to honor the gods of war and the underworld. The victim's hands were bound, placed on a platform, and the priest struck a single blow with an obsidian axe. The head was often displayed on a stand, with blood running through channels to the altar. Drowning in cenotes was also practiced. Cenotes were considered gateways to the underworld. If a victim sank into their depths, they became a messenger between gods and humans. Victims were young people adorned with jade and gold. They were cast into the water, and priests observed. If the victims sank immediately, the gods had accepted them. If they floated, they were retrieved, for they were deemed unworthy. But sometimes the gods did not require blood, they demanded victory. One of the most mysterious Maya traditions was the ball game, or pak tapak. It was not merely a sport but a ritual in which fate itself was decided. Players could not touch the ball with their hands or feet. They used their shoulders, chests, elbows, and hips. The goal was to strike a heavy rubber ball through a stone hoop mounted high on the court wall. But this was incredibly difficult. The ball weighed several kilograms, and the hoop was nearly 3 meters above the ground. Games could last for hours and sometimes even days, until one team scored the winning point. This was a symbolic struggle between the forces of light and darkness, day and night, sun and moon. Some games were mere entertainment, but when a game held ritual significance, it could end with a sacrifice. Historians debate who was sacrificed, losers or winners. Some believe that offering the best player was the greatest honor, as he became a messenger between humans and gods. Others think the losers were sacrificed because they embodied the forces of darkness, which had to be destroyed. Either way, the ball game was not merely a contest. It was a ritual upon which the fate of an entire city could depend. When a great ruler died, his funeral was extraordinary. His body was washed with fragrant oils, dressed in the finest garments, and adorned with jade, symbolizing eternal life. The burial itself was unusual. Tombs were hidden deep within pyramids, creating underground passages and chambers filled with offerings. Next to the ruler, they placed jade masks to preserve his face after death, clay vessels with food to prevent hunger in the afterlife, and sacrificial servants and concubines, people who were killed to accompany him in eternity. It was believed that the ruler became a mediator between the human world and the gods, watching over his people and assisting the living from the heavens. Now let us explore how the Maya envisioned the origins of the world. For this, we turn to one of the 4 surviving books, Popol Vuh. Long ago, in times when the world had no form and the sky and earth were a single dark ocean, the gods decided it was time to bring order to chaos. They parted the waters, created mountains, rivers, and trees, and filled the sky with the sun and the moon. But that was not enough. In their world, there were no beings to remember their names, praise them, or give thanks for the created order. Thus was born the first attempt to create humans. At first, they molded people from clay, but these beings were weak, fragile, unable to speak or hold weapons. The gods destroyed them and tried again. Next came humans made of wood. They were strong, could walk and work, but inside they remained empty. They knew neither fear nor gratitude. They did not honor the gods, offer sacrifices, or pray at altars. Angered, the creators sent calamity upon them. Furious beasts tore them apart, their own dogs devoured them, and houses collapsed on their heads. It was only on the 3rd attempt that the world gained its true inhabitants. The gods created the first humans from maize. Their bones were as strong as the stalks, their blood flowed like its juice. They were strong, intelligent, remembered their creators, offered sacrifices, and upheld the laws of the world. Thus began the story of humanity. But not all was peaceful in this new world. The shadows still struggled against the light. One of the greatest battles occurred in the underworld, in Xibalba. Among all Maya stories, the most ancient and legendary is the tale of the hero twins, Hunahpu and Xibalba. Once on the earth, there lived 2 brothers, Hunahpu and Hunahpu, great ball players. They loved their game, and every day the strikes of their balls shook the air, filling the land with rhythmic thuds. But their merriment reached the depths of Xibalba, where the grim lords of death dwelled. The underworld gods disliked being disturbed, and wishing to punish the audacious mortals, they summoned the brothers to their realm. The brothers could not refuse. They descended into the world of shadows. Yet they failed the trials. They were deceived, tortured, and then killed, left forever in the underworld. However, the story did not end there. Hunhunapu's spirit did not vanish without a trace. After some time in the shadow of a great tree, his seed sprouted, a shoot that bore the twins Hunapu and Xibalba. From early childhood they were extraordinary, agile, clever, cunning, and strong. When they grew, fate led them once again to the ball game, and the strikes of their balls again disturbed the underworld. The lords of Xibalba were enraged once more. They summoned the brothers, hoping to deceive them as they had their father. But this time it was different. The twins knew who they were dealing with. They did not bow to false rulers, did not trust the cunning servants, and did not fall into traps. They were sent into deadly trials. The house of cold, where even souls froze. The house of fire, where flames made breathing impossible. And the house of tigers, where bloodthirsty beasts awaited their prey. But they survived, enduring every trial without a single moment of doubt. Then the Lords of Death decided to challenge them at their own game, a ball match. It wasn't a pastime, it was a fight to the death. They battled in darkness itself, where the night was their weapon and their enemies were the forces of the underworld. They were winning, but the gods of the underworld couldn't let them escape. The twins were tricked, trapped, and slain, their bodies torn apart, their bones scattered along the river. Yet even death couldn't hold them. They turned into fish, and then into old men who could perform miracles. Returning to Xibalba, they amazed everyone by bringing the dead back to life. The Lords of Death, stunned, demanded to see this magic for themselves. They ordered the twins to be killed and revived, but that was exactly what the twins had planned. When they were slain, no one brought them back. And thus, the gods of death were defeated. Having conquered darkness, the twins didn't return to Earth. Instead, they ascended to the heavens, where the gods transformed them into the sun and the moon. And every dawn, as the sun rises above the horizon, it reminds humankind of their triumph. They defeated death itself. And as long as their light burns in the sky, their story will never be forgotten. All of this is told in the ancient book the Maya called Popol Vuh. That sacred text survived fire, time, and destruction. It was nearly lost, burned with the temples, erased from the earth. Yet its words lived on, passed from mouth to mouth, until someone finally wrote them down again. It's more than a book. It's the voice of the ancestors. A story that will live as long as the sun and moon continue their endless journey across the heavens. Among all the mysteries of the Maya civilization, one has haunted people's imaginations for over a century: the legend of the 13 crystal skulls. According to legend, they hold ancient knowledge powerful enough to change the fate of humanity. They say that if all 13 are brought together, they will reveal the secrets of creation, warn of coming cataclysms, or even unlock the key to immortality. But where did this story begin? The legend of the crystal skulls was never written in any Maya text. It survived through oral tradition, born from ancient myths that spoke of a mighty civilization, one that existed before humankind and possessed the wisdom of the gods. That ancient civilization vanished long ago, but it left behind 13 artifacts said to contain all its secrets. These skulls were carved from single blocks of pure quartz and were believed to possess mystical powers. They could speak, show visions, and even heal the sick. But to awaken their true power, they had to be brought together at a specific moment, a time, legend says, when humanity stands on the brink of self-destruction. For centuries, the story was dismissed as nothing more than myth. That changed in the early 20th century, when the first of these mysterious relics was discovered deep in the jungles of Belize. In the early 1920s, British adventurer Frederick Mitchell Hedges set out to explore the ruins of an ancient Maya city known as Lubantan. One day, his daughter Anna was wandering through the crumbling temples when something caught her eye, a strange object gleaming in the sunlight. It was a skull carved from a single piece of rock crystal. Its surface was flawlessly polished, and its lower jaw could move just like a real one. When held up to the light, the crystal refracted the sun's rays, filling it with flickers of fire that seemed to dance within. Anna later claimed that, not long after the discovery, she began experiencing vivid visions. She saw scenes from the distant past, heard disembodied voices, and felt as though the skull was transmitting ancient knowledge directly to her mind. News of the discovery spread quickly. Scholars, mystics, and scientists alike were drawn to the enigma. Many believed it was a genuine relic of the gods, but soon it became clear that this skull wasn't unique. More began to appear, each with its own strange history. The British Museum houses another quartz skull, purchased from collectors in the 19th century. It too was carved with astonishing precision and was said to have once belonged to Maya priests. Another found its way to Paris, to the Musée d'El Ham. Smaller than the others, it nonetheless displayed an extraordinary level of craftsmanship. Some researchers believed it came from an even older, long-lost civilization. As more skulls were discovered, the legend of the 13 artifacts began to take shape, scattered across the world, waiting to be reunited. Some saw them as gifts from the gods. Others believed they were left behind by ancient visitors from the stars. Still others claimed the skulls could heal, channel wisdom, and reveal the hidden truths of the universe. An intriguing twist came in the early 20th century, when the Ahnenerbe, a German organization devoted to uncovering ancient knowledge and occult relics, took an interest in the crystal skulls. They believed, as many still do, that the Maya, like other great civilizations, once possessed secret knowledge that has since been lost to time. According to some accounts, researchers from the Ahnenerbe sought the crystal skulls, believing they contained encrypted knowledge or even magical powers. Whispers claimed that a few of the skulls actually fell into their hands, though no official records have ever confirmed it. Not everyone, however, was convinced the skulls were genuine. By the late 20th century, new technology allowed scientists to examine the artifacts under powerful microscopes. What they found was startling. There were no traces of ancient tools on their surfaces. If the skulls had truly been crafted by the Maya, they would show the telltale marks of obsidian blades or stone chisels. Instead, researchers discovered microscopic grooves typical of modern metal tools. The British Museum conducted its own investigation and concluded that their skull had been made in France in the 19th century, an era when collectors eagerly bought and sold ancient treasures. Soon after, experts announced that most of the known crystal skulls were likely European fabrications. Yet despite the scientific verdict, the legend refused to die. Some believe the fakes were modeled after real, ancient skulls, the true ones hidden somewhere, waiting to be rediscovered. Others insist that at least a few genuine artifacts once existed, their originals lost to time or locked away in private collections. Anna Mitchell Hedges, until her final days, stood by her story. Her crystal skull was authentic, and it possessed powers beyond explanation. The Maya left the world countless mysteries, but among their many legends, one of the grandest and most enigmatic is the tale of Kukulkan, the great feathered serpent who brought knowledge, law, and order to humankind. According to myth, Kukulkan came to the Maya from beyond their lands. Unlike other gods, he was described as a magnificent serpent covered in feathers. His body wound through the heavens. He soared like a bird, yet carried the wisdom of the earth-bound snake. Kukulkan not only gave the people laws and understanding, he taught them how to build cities, cultivate their fields, and read the patterns of the stars. It was said that he gifted them the sacred calendar, one that could predict the changing seasons, solar eclipses, and the movements of planets. But Kukulkan was more than a teacher. When the world fell into chaos, when war threatened to tear the cities apart, he would return to restore balance. Legends say that Kukulkan never died. He journeyed across the seas, promising to come back one day. Some say he sailed east, toward the rising sun. Others claim he ascended into the heavens, becoming one of the stars. What's most fascinating is that the Maya weren't alone in this belief. Across Mesoamerica, other peoples told remarkably similar stories. The Aztecs, for instance, worshipped a god named Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, wise and benevolent just like Kukulkan, and they too said he would one day return. One of the most controversial theories about Kukulkan claims that he was a fair-skinned, bearded man who came from afar. This idea spread widely after the Spanish conquest, when European chroniclers reinterpreted native legends to serve their own narratives. According to that version, the Maya and Aztecs were supposedly awaiting the return of Kukulkan, a belief that, as the story goes, allowed Hernan Cortés to enter the city without resistance. But modern historians see it differently. They argue that this myth emerged after the Spanish invasion, crafted by the conquerors themselves to legitimize their rule in the eyes of the indigenous people. There is no archaeological or anthropological evidence that the Maya or Aztecs had any contact with light-skinned peoples before the arrival of the Spaniards. In the early 20th century, the German organization Ahnenerbe searched for traces of ancient advanced civilizations they believed had once shared their wisdom with the peoples of the Americas. Some accounts suggest that Ahnenerbe researchers studied the myths of Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl, hoping to find proof of a lost race of sages or a forgotten civilization. Yet there are no official records showing they ever found any artifacts proving contact between the Maya and other cultures. Today, most scholars classify these ideas as pseudoscience. And since we're talking about Maya mysteries, it's impossible not to mention the prophecy that captivated the modern world. In the years leading up to December 21, 2012, people across the globe braced for the apocalypse. Some feared natural disasters, others built shelters, some expected divine ascension, or even a collision with the mysterious planet Nibiru. The message was everywhere. The Maya predicted the end of the world. But when dawn broke on December 22, the sun rose peacefully over the horizon, and the world remained unchanged. The prophecy had collapsed. So where did this idea come from? Did the Maya truly believe their calendar foretold humanity's doom? Or was it simply a modern misinterpretation, twisted by time and imagination? To understand, we must look at how the Maya perceived time itself. For us, time is a straight line, the past behind us, the present moving forward, and the future waiting ahead. But the Maya saw time as a circle. Days, seasons, and eras flowed endlessly, one into another. For them, there was no final ending, only renewal, the start of another great cycle. One of the most sophisticated systems they ever devised was the long count calendar. It didn't just measure days or years. It tracked vast spans of time, covering entire millennia. Its foundation was the Baktan, a period lasting roughly 394 years. The Maya believed that 13 Baktans made up one grand cycle of about 5125 years. And it was this great cycle that ended on December 21, 2012. Yet nowhere in Maya inscriptions does it say that the world would end on that day. It simply marked the close of one era and the dawn of another. The entire theory traces back to a single ancient monument discovered in the ruins of Tortuguero, carved more than 1,300 years ago. The text mentioned the completion of the 13th Baktan, and that in that moment Balan Yacht, a mysterious god of change, chaos, and renewal, would descend. But the inscription was damaged, parts of it lost forever. The missing symbols left room for endless speculation. And that's where the modern myth took shape. Could it be that the Maya understood time in ways we still can't grasp? That their calendars weren't just tools for counting days, but instruments to glimpse beyond a human lifetime, perhaps into the fate of entire civilizations? Some archaeologists believe the prophecy may have referred to major transformations within Maya society itself. Shifts in power, political upheavals, or natural events remembered as turning points. But by the late 20th century, the story had been romanticized and distorted. Books and documentaries claimed the Maya possessed knowledge far beyond our own, predicting solar storms, asteroid impacts, or even intervention from alien civilizations. Hollywood eagerly seized on the idea. By the 2000s, movies and TV shows had turned the ancient prophecy into a global doomsday myth. As winter 2012 drew near, the panic grew. People sold their belongings, built shelters, and joined cults that promised salvation to those worthy of surviving the final day. History has seen this pattern before. Around the year 1000, many in Europe believed the world was about to end and prepared for Judgment Day. In the 20th century, fears of nuclear war, climate collapse, and environmental disaster gave rise to countless apocalyptic visions of the future. Humanity has always been drawn to prophecies of the end, perhaps because they make our moment in time feel significant. The Maya left behind a legacy that still astonishes the world. They were the first to conceive of zero, not just as a number, but as a philosophy of emptiness. They built calendars that tracked not only the sun, but also Venus, the moon, eclipses, and the grand cycles of ages. They raised entire stone cities in the heart of the jungle, without the wheel or metal tools. They created a written language where each symbol was image, sound, and magic combined. They mastered mathematics, medicine, and astronomy with a precision far ahead of their time. They played ritual games where the outcome could mean life or death. They drank bitter chocolate as a sacred elixir, worshipped maize as the source of life, and watched shadows move across temple steps to measure the breath of the gods. Then they vanished, or perhaps simply moved on to another cycle. Much of their wisdom was lost, yet much still sleeps, carved into stone. But above all, the Maya left us with something eternal, a sense of mystery. And that mystery endures as long as we keep asking questions. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. If you enjoyed it, support our channel with a subscription and a kind comment. It helps us keep going.